Hey folks, welcome back to Learn from Dad. My name is James. We're here today to talk to you about the difference between metric and standard or SAE hardware and how to identify it so that when you're walking over to grab a wrench out of your toolbox, you know whether to grab metric or standard. The last thing I want you to do is be grabbing an adjustable wrench just because you don't know, is it metric or is it standard SAE type bolt. So stick around, let's take a look and figure out how we can identify. So when you're trying to figure out whether it's a metric or a standard bolt, let's take these two for example. And I pick them up and I compare them. What I'm going to look for is the markings on the head of the bolt. We're going to start with metric because frankly that's the easiest and I wish the world would all switch to metric. So on metric bolts, you're typically going to see the grading of the bolt, which has to do with the hardness and the strength and some of those other properties that an engineer will care about. But here's two examples of a metric bolt. So you see this one says 8.8 and this one says 10.9. Those are different grades of metric bolts. Pick up this large one here, you can see that one says 12.9. So anytime you see 8.8, 10.9, and 12.9, those are metric graded bolts. So that's a real easy way to say, hey, I've got a metric bolt, I need to get a metric wrench or a metric size ratchet and socket. There's technically also a couple more. I think one is a 4.6 and others, but these are the ones you're going to see commonly as 8.8, 10.9, 12.9. Common identifier, metric bolt. Now, when it comes to standard, that's a little tougher. The way standard identifies bolts is a couple different ways. The most common one that you're going to see in a homeowner or vehicle application is lines on the head of a bolt. So here you see I have 3 lines on the head of a bolt, and if I pick up, I think it's this one over here, you see that I've got 6 lines on the head of the bolt. Now what's even more confusing is the one with 6 lines, this is what's referred to as a grade 8. So take the number of lines plus 2 is the grade. So 6 lines, grade 8. 3 lines, grade 5. Now will I ever see a grade 2? Yes, they do make a grade 2 bolt. So something like this may be a grade 2 bolt, but it also just may be an ungraded bolt. So it gets a little trickier when you talk about SAE or standard bolts. Now, one thing you do notice here is all these bolts have some other marking on them. This one says JH. This one has my favorite, it actually looks like a little Pac-Man type indicator. This one says AY. All bolts hardware require the manufacturer's stamp on them. So those tell us whoever these manufacturers are, and I don't know that, but that's the manufacturer's marking. Now, to make it even a little trickier, when it comes to standard bolts, there's a variety of other markings as well that you might see. So let's take a look here. So these 2 bolts, you see I've got a manufacturer's marking and I've got actually 4 markings off to the side. This is a standard bolt, but it's not your normal 3 dashes or 6 dashes, which you do see most commonly. And then we get another one like this where it says NY, that's the hardware manufacturer's stamp, and then I get this 307A. So I'm going to show you a chart in just a moment from the company FASTENAL, which I'm not affiliated with in any way, shape, or form. It's just a chart that I like to use from them that is a great guidance of all the different markings on the different kinds of bolts. And what you're going to see is with SAE/standard or inch hardware, these markings really vary significantly. But I'm telling you, in normal applications, for most normal homeowner stuff, you're going to see either 6 lines for a grade 8, you're going to see 3 lines for a grade 5, or you're going to see, again, no lines for a grade 2. Now, when I'm going to grab a wrench, what that's going to tell me is, do I grab a standard wrench or do I grab a metric wrench? Now, here's some interesting things. So, most of the time, wrenches don't match up between SAE and metric, but occasionally they do. So for example, here's a 15/16 and a 24 millimeter. These are actually the same size, plus or minus micro amounts of variance. So there is one of our standard bolts, and you see that it fits well within my 15/16. It also fits well right there within my 24 millimeter. Now I'll grab my 8.8 marked bolt. Again, that's my metric bolt. And I go into my 24 millimeter. You see it fits snugly. I go into my 15/16 and it fits snugly. So occasionally you'll get lucky and we get some crossover. But that's not always the case. So let's grab these other two. Oops, stuff falling off the bench here. So here I've got a 10.9 graded bolt, so that's metric. And I got a 3- bolt, so that is my SAE or standard. And on the bench I've got a 3/4 and an 18 millimeter. So if I take my standard bolt with the 3 dashes, you see it fits perfectly in my 3/4. If I attempt to put it in the 18 mil, it's just a bit too big with the bolt head. Similarly, if I take my metric bolt, again it's a 10.9 graded, and I go into my 18 millimeter, it fits perfectly. If I put it into the 3/4, it works, but you see how sloppy that is. If I have a lot of torque on that bolt when I'm trying to remove it, I have a strong chance of starting to round those edges off, and then you're in for an even worse day trying to get that bolt out. So here, folks, is that reference guide that I was talking about for fasteners. This happens to come from FASTENAL. Again, I'm not associated with them. I'm a mechanical guy that found this on the internet in the past, and it's always been a helpful guide. So it has everything you would want to know about nuts and bolts and washers and the different grades. Now keep in mind that what some of the things are that are on here, like some of these items up here, might be used in structural steel applications or things that the normal homeowner won't see. Really what we care about is externally threaded fasteners. So if we scroll down here to the bottom, you'll see that we have mechanical properties of metric externally threaded fasteners. And like I indicated out in the garage, there's only 4 different grades, which makes life really easy: 4.6, 8.8, 10.9, and 12.9. And just like we showed in the garage, that's what they look like. So very easy to identify a metric bolt. And those metric bolts, what these grades ultimately mean is different strengths. So things like different tensile strength or shear strength. The higher the grade, the stronger the bolt in some of these different properties. Now, as we scroll down here and we get into the externally threaded inch series of fasteners, this is really interesting. Like I was talking, look at the volume of different indicators that are used on inch or SAE type bolts. The common ones that you're going to see, like we discussed, the 3 dashes, grade 5, the 6 dashes is a grade 8. The no dashes up here at the top is a grade 2. Those are the common ones. Sometimes you will find them in different organizations or arrangements. So like here is 6 dashes all on one half of the bolt. That's still a grade 8. But some of these start getting into some really unique characteristics. Now out in the garage, I did have some bolts that were labeled 307A. So again, when it comes to SAE standard inch bolts, there's a wide variety of markings in addition to the manufacturer's marking that can help identify inch or standard. But really, what I like to say is, first, is it a metric bolt? If it is not a metric bolt, it's likely going to be a standard bolt. So I'll put this link to this reference PDF here in the description in case you want to download it. So let's wrap this video up. So there you have it, folks. Hopefully that helps you identify the difference between a metric and a SAE standard inch type bolt. Get you the right wrench so that you don't end up with a rounded off bolt and cause yourself bigger problems. We're going to do one more video in the near future relative to identifying the difference between metric and standard bolt threads and sizes. So that way, if you're ever faced with, I have to replace this bolt, make sure you get the correct one. So stick around, come back, check it out. Thanks for watching.